Bonjour, folks. I'm Sass, and welcome to Creator Conversations, Episode 4. If you grew up in a Caribbean and/or immigrant household, then I think today's conversation will be relevant for you. I was inspired to talk about today's topic, perfectionism, because I think as we head into 2026, I wanted to share some of the experiences that I've been having over the past year and a half that helped me to get over my perfectionism. I was inspired to talk about today's topic because I came across the Trini creator Kyle Boss, and I see his skits show up frequently on my feed about what it was like growing up in a Caribbean household. And one of these skits in particular that stood out to me was the ones with giving your parents your school report as a Caribbean child. And I couldn't find the exact skit, but I found a similar one where the parent was lamenting Kyle's grades.
Caribbean parents reading your report.
Abi. Get my report. Is your report? Yeah.
So I get up early every morning, dropping it to school, paying for your shoe, your pants, your shirt, all the books in your bag, everything.
No, but daddy is my
Right?
father. Like,
And this is what you will bring for me? So I making money. I growing money. Go outside on that tree for me and tell me if you've seen any money on that tree.
If you grew up in a Caribbean household, an immigrant household with boomer parents in the 90s, I think they placed so many of their hopes on us and they expected us to be perfect. And as we grow into adulthood, I think that perfectionism is something that you have to intentionally work to release yourself of. Because, as people always like to say, no one is perfect. And I wanted to give some tips for how I spent this year pretty much doing what I call a year of throwing spaghetti at the wall. So, for those of you who don't know, I am a sound designer, sound recordist, sound editor by training. I went to film school and I've been working on film and podcasts for about a decade now. And this year, I wanted to intentionally transition out of relying purely on film productions and podcast projects and being able to build a more sustainable sound business. So, starting unintentionally in May of 2024, on a whim, I launched a podcast because, as I mentioned in episode 1, I heard the term audio journaling from fellow creator Ariel Simone. She talked about the practice of using the voice notes app on her phone to create audio journals to herself as a way of doing a stream of consciousness of her thoughts and being able to listen back. And I was so inspired by that that I actually created the podcast audio journals. And I did 6 episodes. All 6 are available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I only have 3 uploaded here on YouTube, but I'm going to upload the rest. But I literally heard Ariel talk about this concept, and I think within the span of a week, think it was a Monday, I had the idea, and by Friday, I published episode 1 because as a sound person, it should seem very natural that I should not only be working behind the scenes on podcasts, but I was like, why didn't I ever think to create one for myself? And I had had the idea before, I just didn't know what I would talk about. And so I started the Audio Journals podcast with no pressure. I just wanted to give it a go of taking a podcast from idea to the platform, publishing it on a platform. And I was so happy I did that. And that experimentation continued on through this year. In about March, I told this story on one of my Instagram stories, but in about March of this year, as I was thinking of other ways that I could expand my sound business, I had the idea to create a platform, sort of like a Insight Timer or Calm, but instead of having other people upload their meditations or their soundscapes, I wanted to be able to be the one creating these soundscapes myself and also create a community from it where people could upload their voice notes, their audio journals, and I would create customized soundscapes for them. So I had this idea and I pitched it to a wellness professional that I did a cold email reach out on LinkedIn, or I sent a cold message, and the call went well, but unfortunately I fumbled the follow up. And I think I said this in episode 1 as well. I beat myself up for about 2 months about that, where I was like, wow, I really dropped the ball with that opportunity. But then by mid June, I said, you know what? I'm going to launch this platform for myself. And so it was about June 13th, June 14th. I said, I'm giving myself till July 2nd to get this platform launched because I want to minimize the time to talk myself out of it. And so for 2 weeks, I put my head down, I got some soundscapes together, reorganized my website, and I launched the sonic wellness platform and community Home Frequency through my website. And I did that because this is the first point I want to make. With giving myself those 2 weeks, and also the same thing with the podcasts, getting the idea on the Monday and launching it by the Friday, a lot of times we delay our we delay our own success by thinking about someday I'll do that, or let me just wait till I have more information, or let me wait until I'm ready. I like to reduce the amount of time between having the idea and the execution because I don't want to give myself time to talk myself out of it. Unless you're doing surgery or flying a plane, you can do things on a whim. I always say I'm someone who is the type of person who loves to do things on a whim because as long as it's not going to cause harm to myself or others, I'm willing to take the risk and learn how to pivot, iterate, adapt along the way. Because I would rather regret having done something and learned the lessons from it than find myself 10 years from now saying, I wish I had started the podcast. And what I have learned from doing audio journals and also doing home frequency, I gave myself room to experiment and just try things without a lot of pressure. And I shared my progress on my Instagram, and it inspired me. And then I also had people reach out to me and say it's inspiring them because they're seeing me grow in real time and pivot in real time. And that was really meaningful because I said it doesn't have to be perfect. I don't expect it to be. I'm just trying things out. And I already know for season 2 of audio journals, now that I already have 6 episodes of season 1 out of the way, I know how I want to execute season 2 of the podcast because I've learned so much from how I executed season 1, where I went wrong, what the mistakes were, and also creatively how I want to follow through with season 2. So I used these experiences to gather data so that I could iterate again in a more intentional and strategic fashion the next time. In creating home frequency, one of the things I wanted to do was create custom soundscapes. So not just your meditation track where it was a voice, my voice, I would do the track, but I would also take the time to sound design them very well. Because since I have a film sound background, I would add music, ambiances, sound effects, because I wanted to make it a more fleshed out soundscape. And also, I wanted to try my hand at creating custom music tracks. So if you have a Mac or MacBook Pro computer, you know it comes with the software GarageBand. And I had opened GarageBand before, but I'd never really played around with it. And so I used the summer to create some custom soundscapes or custom music tracks in GarageBand using the Apple loops that come with the software. And that was probably the most exciting part because I don't have a music background. I didn't grow up playing a musical instrument, which is one of my regrets. And I'm working to catch up on that by learning how to play the keyboard. But being able to create some custom music tracks using GarageBand, I was like, this is so cool. Like I can call myself a musician slash composer if I want to. I mean, that might be taking a little far, but it was refreshing to have a beginner's mindset. And that is another point that I want to convey to you. Go into your work, your life with a beginner's mindset. We're not supposed to be experts in everything. This is all our first time doing life. And I think if you grew up with the sense of perfectionism that is expected either from your parents, from society, whatever the environment may be, giving yourself permission to move through work, tasks, life with a beginner's mindset and being open to grow, being open to learn from your mistakes, being open to ask for help, being open to seek guidance. I reached out to other sound professionals that I know, looked up YouTube videos. There's so many free resources out there and also people who are willing to help. And when you approach things with the beginner's mindset, you give yourself a chance to actually grow through whatever project or task that you have been set out to do. Another point I want to make about the beginner's mindset is that it allows you to reconnect with your inner child. I know inner child may seem woo woo and it's a word du jour these days, but it very much reminded me of what it was like when I was a kid, just playing around and having fun and doing things just for the sake of doing them. Not doing them for a grade, not doing them for approval, not doing them to for economics or to earn an income. Just being able to play around like a kid was liberating in a lot of ways. I don't know how to fully articulate what it's like to just play. Like, we really just need to give ourselves time to play because adulthood is so serious and we feel like everything can either make or break us, whether it's personally, professionally, socially, financially. You need to give yourself room to just play. And playing around in GarageBand, because that's what I called it. I said, I'm just playing around in GarageBand. If I don't make a song that sounds good, it doesn't matter. It's just me and I'm posting these soundscapes and my community members, they don't know what it's supposed to sound like. Like, I'm the one who's saying this is the soundscape. Hope you enjoy it, but it's just giving myself a chance to experiment and figure out who am I outside of the things that I already know. I already know film sound and now I want to get better at music. And I gave myself time to figure out what can I create when I'm just given a software and no pressure. I think the last point that I want to leave you with regarding perfectionism is I saw a few creators talk about this on TikTok where they were saying that we hold ourselves to standards that other people set, whether it's your parents, societies, and it can be regarding anything from your profession, especially as if you're a child of immigrants, where they expect you to be doctor, lawyer, engineer. Getting married is another big one, having children. So many times we place ourselves under the expectations of others. And I think with regarding Kyle's skit that inspired this talk, with the grades in particular, I wanted to leave you with the concept of you need to be the one to set your own standard and define your own metrics. This can be a little difficult, especially if you're, let's say, in a school environment or a work environment where you have KPIs or grades that you're expected to get in order to pass for school or professional purposes. But I think no matter what you are doing, whether it's your personal or professional life, you need to have some degree of defining your standards and setting your own standards and defining your own metrics so that you don't constantly find yourself trying to chase somebody else's goalpost. This is a mindset that I adapted about 5 years ago now, purely as a method of self preservation, because I was working for a very difficult employer. And I hadn't heard the phrase moving the goalposts at the time. It was actually my coworker who mentioned it because we were going through a similar thing with our employer. And when I heard her say that, I was like, oh, that's what this is. Every time I meet the standard that this person set, they keep moving it. And so I didn't realize that there was a term for it, moving the goalposts. In order to not go crazy or stress myself out, because I knew that I had met the standard, I said, you know what? As long as I know I have met my own standard and I have done the job to the best of my ability, I really don't care where this person moves the goalposts. And if anything, it's time for me to exit this job. And so for me, I adapted the mindset of setting my own standard and defining my own metrics. And I've carried it through to my own life and business because I realize, especially because I saw some other creators talk about it on TikTok with regard to growing up in Caribbean households. A lot of times, parents held us to standards that they themselves could not meet. And the specific creator, I can't remember her name or her account, but she was basically saying what I've been saying, where she had to go through the process of releasing herself of her parents' standards and creating her own standards. Because she said, why should I feel bad that I don't meet your standards when you don't meet them yourselves? And that was such an epiphany for me because I was like, yeah, we get so caught up and so stressed out trying to meet other people's standards, but it's like if you were in my shoes, you wouldn't meet them yourself. And I have taken that I've taken that to heart in terms of I know I do the best I can, and I know that I'm holding myself accountable to whatever metrics I use to decide what my definition of success is. That's the other thing. I define what success looks like to me, both in my personal and professional life. I'm not concerned about other people's timelines in my work or in my personal or professional life because I am running my own race and I am keeping my eyes on my lane. So to leave you with a recap of today's topic, go into 2026 with a beginner's mindset. Give yourself space to make mistakes. Try new things, try new softwares, try new hobbies, try new things in your life, and expect to make mistakes and learn from them. Intentionally learn from them and take whatever feedback you get, whether it is personally, professionally, use it as data to iterate to the next version of the project, the task, yourself. I truly believe that there is no failure if you have learned from the experience. There's no such thing as failure if you have learned from the experience. The last thing, set your own standards and define your own metrics and your own definition of success. Stop chasing other people's goalposts in 2026. This is your life. This is your career. This is your business. Whatever it may be, you need to be the one setting the parameters that you want to meet. So I hope that inspires you as we head into 2026. This was a topic that was on my mind, and I just really felt called to share that with you because I think with the new year, new me on the horizon, I wanted to give something meaningful, talk about something meaningful that has basically carried me through the last year and a half with my experimenting and pivoting in my business. And that's what's going to carry me into 2026. Now that I have all of this data from the podcast, from building home frequency, from continuing to do my film and podcast work, I'm so excited for what I have coming up in 2026 because I've spent the past year and a half intentionally gathering data. So give yourself a chance to do the same. So that's all for today, Creator Conversations. I hope to see you back here for more. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.